And we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How's everybody doing? Thank you for joining me today on our Crisis Marketing webinar series. It's so cool to see everybody registering and coming on board and people calling in from all over the world. My name is Jeremy Miller. I am the founder of Sticky Branding and the host of today's webinar. And this is an ongoing series. We have been exploring since the start of this crisis, this ever-evolving strategic landscape and everything that's changing and why after a coronavirus. And so today, what we're going to do is build on many of the ideas that we've been sharing so far, but we're also going to start evolving because this is, I think, a conversation that's going to be carrying on for the foreseeable future, at least for this calendar year. And every month, we're going to be hosting another one of these crisis marketing webinars. And I hope you can participate. And it's this opportunity to have a conversation, to learn from one another, and to continue to evolve and adapt as we go forward on this. And I'm just staring at the photo of myself. And do you remember what it was like to have a haircut? I feel like I got a helmet head as I'm staring at myself right now. But this is this new reality. It's a little bit messy. It's a little bit organic. And so how do we do this? Well, today, if you've been on previous webinars, welcome back. If this is your first time here, let's dive into this. And what I'd like to do that's a little bit different today is to open this up for some more participation. I am a keynote speaker, and what I love to do when I'm speaking at a conference in a live setting is to create engagement, to create games and conversations and interaction. And I don't really get that in a webinar setting. I don't know about you, but all of our time is getting spent on Zoom, and I feel like my retinas are getting burnt out. But this type of experience right now is like a television. I'm speaking to a camera through a microphone, and we're missing that live participation. So here's what we're going to do that's a little bit different today. We're going to have a Q&A for the very first time in these webinars at the end. So if you've got questions as I'm talking, share your ideas or put your questions in the Q&A, and we're going to respond to them. We're also going to be doing some polls throughout the webinar today. Pardon me if we get this a little bit messy. This is all breaking new ground for us, so it's trying to learn a new medium and change things up. And we've also got the chat to have multiple streams of engagement. And so our hope in this webinar series is to continue to level up to get more and more engagement and activities. And maybe in a future one, we'll actually have everyone's pictures and videos live, and we can actually facilitate a live conversation. But today, it's incremental change. And this is how we are operating today, because in many respects, it's a brave new world. I like to say that metaphor, it's BCAC, or before coronavirus, after coronavirus. There's this very clear dividing line for each and every one of us. And we'll refer to 2020 of BCAC. And after coronavirus, everything is starting to shift. It doesn't mean that what you did before was irrelevant, but it takes on new meaning. It takes on new relevance of how we operate today. And how we are responding to AC is very personal. For me, when the coronavirus lockdowns were announced, it started in North America on March 11th when they announced the travel advisory. And by March 15th, we already started to see the layoffs. And that moment really triggered something deep and visceral inside me. And it hit my childhood experiences and forced Sticky Branding to really level up. Now, as many of you know, or if you've been in part of these previous webinars, is that I grew up in a family business in the recruiting sector. And the recruiting industry is an industry that goes up and down with the economy. So every time there's a recession and a spike in unemployment, your business suffers. And I can tell you in vivid detail what each and every recession, starting with the 1989 market crash, has been like. If I look back to the early 90s, that's when I was a teenager. I was 13 to 16 years old. And that recession really, really hurt our family business. And as a result, my parents had to make sacrifices. Our family made sacrifices. And that left that indelible mark of what an entrepreneurial family can go through when we go through this type of a traumatic situation. And my heart goes out immediately to everybody who has faced a layoff or had to make layoffs or had to make cuts in their business, because it has that effect. And so our family kept going through that. And when I joined the company in 2004, we made a very clear commitment. We knew the next recession was coming. We just didn't know when. And that fear was baked in me. And so we started thinking about our strategy right from the very beginning. And in the 08-09 recession that followed the market meltdowns, the Great Recession, my family business had actually no slippage in sales. Our strategy worked to the point where we actually generated one new customer per week on average in that period. And that strength of that moment in time actually gave me the momentum to sell my family's business in 2013 and transition full-time into sticky branding and do what I love today, which is work with companies to grow their brands. But when the lockdown started, what happened at the beginning of or middle of March is we started to see the layoffs reporting. And I've been tracking this data from the very beginning because this is something that I follow. And when I look at this, it caused us to react really, really quickly and aggressively. And it's also been very purpose-driven. Today, Sticky Branding is a very different consultancy than we were 12 weeks ago. And the way we position ourselves is Sticky Branding is a strategy consulting firm. We are working with business owners to help them slingshot their companies out of this crisis. And that is something that I truly believe in. And this is something that's been very purpose-driven as we work first and foremost on how to recover the revenue and customers taken by COVID, and then how do we build a strategy to come out stronger than ever. And as we've been doing this, we have been pioneering and developing new models, seeing new case studies and best practices. And that's my hope in this webinar series, is that what we want to do is share what we are learning week to week, working with dynamic companies, helping them navigate and grow out of this crisis, and share this wisdom with you, and also set it up for that we can have best practices and ideas that you can share backwards as well. Because this is our moment truly to rise up. Now, the nice thing about today in May when we're having this meeting is things are starting to feel a little bit lighter. And there's spring in the air, there is new opportunities abound. It's so nice to go outside and connect with people. And that is creating that feeling of vibrance. But we're also starting to see this in the economy as well, that there are new green shoots of opportunity. As the social distancing and the lockdown restrictions are being eased up, companies are starting to open up, and that's giving us this sense of hope. And today, how can we leverage this change of mindset in order to grow out of this? And I love this metaphor of green shoots because this is something that we really need to explore and look for, that this resetting of the economy has created what is, I believe, immense opportunities because new needs and habits are forming that are going to stick around after this crisis. For example, in China in the 2002-2003 SARS pandemic, millions of people were forced to do just like we are today, forced to do social distancing, a lockdown, and stay at home. And as a result, they embraced e-commerce far sooner than the rest of the world. And that was when social media giants e-commerce giants like Alibaba really took scale. And out of that pandemic created new needs and new habits that birthed new industries. And we're seeing this today, that there are new opportunities all around us, that people are excited and hopeful and positive to what is there. But we can see our own habits, that we are spending more time on Zoom, we are doing curbside pickup, we're using e-commerce more, and all of these needs are definitely going to stick around afterwards. Just take curbside pickup. I couldn't imagine that 6 months ago, but don't take that away from me afterwards. I actually love this. This is a great way to do shopping. So these types of things are going to stick around. Now that's in the retail and the consumer-facing world, but there are green shoots of opportunity in every sector of the economy, especially as companies are coming back online. We are seeing, for example, in the industrial sector, that construction workers have been walking off sites because they believe the porta potties or the facilities that they've been given access to are unhygienic. And as a result, construction companies have had to increase the number of contracts or the number of servicing that these porta potties need. So what used to be cleaned, say, once a week, these are now being serviced 3 to 5 times a day. And just imagine the ripple effect that creates inside of an industry. So first, the construction firm is spending more on service technicians. Those trucks are wearing out faster. They need more hoses. They need more pipes. They need more equipment. That also needs more human resources and putting trucks on the road. And so there's this cascade effect across the entire supply chain that is creating new opportunities. So you don't have to simply look at what's happening in our social distancing and working from home. Every industry has green shoots of opportunity. And the first horizon to look at is very much in how do companies reopen safely. As we come back online, there's going to be HR needs. There's going to be communications needs, IT needs, consulting services, software. The whole spectrum, the whole supply chain is an opportunity for us. And so we have lots of opportunities available to us in how we move forward. And so how do we do this? Well, this is really the key to this conversation today, is how do you find and spot new green shoots of opportunity? And the way we do this in crisis marketing is really asking three key questions. Number one, who needs your company and its expertise the most right now? What products or services can you deliver to solve real problems that are valued? And then finally, how can you proactively sell and deliver your services to the people with the most need? And if you look at that first question, it is all about green shoots. How can you make your business and brand of service? When you look for opportunities to be generous, when you look for opportunities to be helpful, you will start to see opportunities that didn't exist 12 weeks ago. And that gives you an opportunity to not only rise in the crisis, but to find your path out of it. So if your business is suffering, this gives you a way to find short-term revenue and cash just by being hyper-present. So how do we do this? Well, one of the very first strategy models I'd like to introduce you to is a tool that we've been using to help identify where are new customers and markets, and where should you focus your expertise and services in order to generate new customers, new revenue, and cash quickly. Now, the way this box works is that the x-axis, we have existing customers and new customers, and then on the top bottom, it's incremental product change or service change and substantive product and service change. Now, obviously, what we want to do is focus on our existing customers. That's where you have relationships. And if you can evolve your value proposition, your products and services in that space, that's going to be your early win. But what we have learned through this crisis is that the steps that we take right now are going to, what we've learned in this crisis is that the opportunity is actually in the corners. That what we can see is, for example, that how can you take your existing products to new markets, to new customers? This becomes a quick win that you could expand your market. This is a good way to think of how do we move forward right now when our core customers may be suffering and shrinking. So where do we expand? Well, take your existing customers to new markets. The other would be to look at your current customers and what could you do in terms of substantive product service changes. And these are the opportunities. If you look at your core and then look at the corners, those are going to probably be your quick wins or the quick wins for the next 6 months. But they're also indicators of green shoots of opportunity. When you look creatively on how you can be helpful by using your expertise, your products and services, and whether you're evolving to new markets or evolving your products and services, you're going to be adapting and getting into new markets that are probably going to stick well beyond this crisis, that could be your future growth. And isn't that exciting to be able to find that? So what does it take to do that? Well, it takes creativity. It takes self-awareness. It takes that mindset that this is a brave new world and we need to look for new ways to get there. So what I'd like to do in today's webinar is share with you a couple of examples of companies that I'm working with and some of the early wins that they're getting. One of the first ones, and I think they're just such a remarkable company, is Foresight Sports Canada. And Foresight manufactures one of the best golf simulators in the world. Their product is truly remarkable. If you're a golf fanatic, this is a piece of technology that gives you data and shows you how your club is hitting the ball and your range and your spin, but it also gets gamified and put out there. Now, before the coronavirus, the way that Foresight delivered their products and services is they would sell contracts to install and build simulator bays in people's homes, businesses, golf resorts, and it was very much driven on the trades or on the construction side of building this up. But as the pandemic started, that was one of the first things that got locked down and prevented from being shared. And so in that, what we started to ask was, how can we do incremental evolution of our products and services in order to the existing install base? And that led to bringing out a product that was already in the vault, but just never really marketed, which was a sim in a box, which is a simulator in this box, this crate, as this video as you're seeing. And to get this to market, we started asking the question of, how do we do this from a business to consumer perspective? And so what Foresight did in the span of 2 weeks is they partnered with Golf Canada. They brought an email out to all of their members, and they created a landing page using Zoho, so something for free. And in that period, the campaign launched and generated 204 sales leads and created Foresight Sports Canada's best sales month, or April was their best April on record. And that's typically a slower month because golf courses are open. But this speaks to a clear need. People are stuck at home and they're looking for entertainment. And the way that Foresight is helpful is by providing happiness, distraction, and something that you can do that you love to do in your garage, in your basement, and somewhere else. And so it's that framing of how do you connect with the right customer at the right time, but also, most importantly, how do you make your value proposition and brand hyper relevant right now? And isn't that what this is all about? After coronavirus, it's all around hyper relevance and communicating to a need or a message that's going to connect with people going through a shared experience. And as we do this, we have to be hyper aware of ourselves that this is a difficult moment in time, because there is immense disparity taking place with what is happening today. There are very clear winners and losers. And as a result, we are seeing a spectrum taking place in terms of how the coronavirus and the lockdowns have affected our businesses. And it's that spectrum from leading to bleeding. Now, if you're in personal protective equipment and selling hand sanitizers and masks, you just hit the lottery. This is the greatest market ever. But if you're in hospitality or retail, you could be bleeding. And we do have examples where clients are down 90, 95% due to the lockdowns and the restrictions that have happened. And that extreme, that dichotomy from leading to bleeding is very real. Now, for the majority of us, we are sitting in that stable to slipping quadrants. And we have to recognize that we're all in different places, but what we can do is build strategy to rise up in this. Now, one of the things, and this is a bit of a harsher conversation or a sadder conversation, one I really don't like to have, is that every business owner really has three choices today. And it is, you can look at the situation, whether you're leading or bleeding, and make the choice. Should we exit? Should we hibernate? Or should we innovate? Before coronavirus, I would rarely ever say to someone that exiting is a fair or reasonable choice. But if you are bleeding and the chances of the reopening are not going to bring you back to profitability, my basic comment today might be, it may be reasonable to take your chips off the table and come back later on, or at least preserve your cash so that you are able to fight another day. That an exit is a possibility. Hibernation is the one that I think is the most risky venture, because that is saying that you could ride this out. And for many businesses that we can't. And so my real view on this is the most logical path forward is innovation. We have to accept that after coronavirus, everything changed. And what we need to look at is, what are our options to climb that ladder? And within sticky branding and crisis marketing, what we really we look at is really two strategy horizons. We're in the immediate, we're in the crisis phase right now. And so the first question that we wrestle with in terms of strategy is, How do you recover the customers and revenue taken by COVID-19? But once you get to cash stability, once you get control of the situation, the second strategy question starts to be, how do you leverage those green shoots to slingshot out of this crisis? And so wherever you sit in the spectrum, you're going to be able to map your strategy here. But this really leads me to one of the key things of what separates someone from finding green shoots to not being able to find green shoots. And it really comes down to mindset, that regardless of where you sit in the crisis, the way you climb out of this is what I would describe as a warrior mindset. And a warrior mindset is something I find so incredibly important right now, because it's the seasoned, hardened entrepreneurs that are punching back faster than ever before. And this is, and I'm sorry, I'm just pushing polls as I try and do two things at once. This is the messiness side of this moment here. What we're seeing, one of the things I really truly believe in this is, at the start of this crisis, I started talking with entrepreneurs and business owners, and what we did is, many of them said, this isn't the worst thing that we've ever faced. And we're going to fight, we're going to come back, and this actually is an opportunity. And what a warrior mindset looks at is, this moment in the crisis is actually a time to innovate. It's a time to take risks. It's a time that you can actually win. And that mindset is something that I think can give you so much power right now, because how you approach things is going to allow you to have that confidence. And if you think of it, this playing field has changed. The opportunities are there. Your customers want you to succeed. There's available capital. So how are you going to win? And what I have heard multiple entrepreneurs, including myself, say is, I've been preparing my whole career for this moment. And it's, you look back over your shoulder and you look back at all the things that you've been investing and thinking about, and you start to punch, you start to see the opportunities, and you start to see how you have an opportunity to move forward. But that mindset, that warrior mindset, is something that you draw from within. At the first few weeks of this crisis, I would often say things like, F this crisis, it's not going to hold us back. It's not going to constrain us. We're going to have our best year ever. And I was saying this with a lot of bravado, but it really came from a place of fear and a place of fight, that we were going to have our best year ever. We were going to innovate and move fast and succeed. And I'm willing to bet that this actually will be my best year ever. And I'm seeing this within our clients too, regardless of where they are in the spectrum, that it's that will to fight, it's that will to win that creates those opportunities to spot and see green shoots. And so let me give you another example of this. Another wonderful company that I really love to work with is Central Smith Ice Cream. They are one of Canada's largest ice cream manufacturers, a third-generation family business. And if you've eaten ice cream in a restaurant in Canada, well, chances are you have eaten their ice cream. They are very prolific in where they are. But at the start of this crisis, if you take what I just said there, they are available in restaurants. That market very much dropped away, and they had to start to reinvent themselves. But what was so interesting in their approach is how they empowered their people to bring forward ideas, to challenge their thinking, and to get ahead of this. And I'll go and give you a couple examples. One of the first challenges they faced is they had overstock items. As the economy slowed, their business slowed, and so they had overstock ice cream. So what they did is they created a curbside pickup option. Jillian and Megan, two young employees in the firm, got the idea, let's put up a Shopify website. We can go to the local Chamber of Commerce and some other people to help us. And they put it up, and what they were blown away with was just the response they got, is that their community rallied around them, and the demand broke every expectation they had. They had no expectation of what could happen. But in the first week the Shopify account was launched, they had better retail sales at their store than they would have in a general month. They are incrementally growing week after week, that this is becoming a real part of the strategy. And every time they add a new product or a new innovation, it takes off. For example, they started out with big tubs and doing the the commercial size ice cream for consumers. And people would show up in their car and they put 2 giant 11.5-liter tubs in their car and drive away. And everyone's wondering where is all that ice cream going to go? But I'm sure it's going to get a good home. But then they've been adding to that. So for example, they then added a couple of weeks ago a 1-liter hand-packed tub, and they projected they would sell 200 tubs a week. Their first week, they sold 1,700 tubs, and they've had to actually hire more people to keep up with the demand. And this is continuing on every side of their business. They've actually seen, while the restaurant trade has declined, the retail side of their business has increased 5-fold. And this is setting them up for a lot of success. But to do that is all boiled down to their people, that their people are empowering them to be so successful right now. And they have this wonderful quote. Brett Stevenson, who is their COO, said to me, "We have transitioned from an and/or company to an and company." Isn't that awesome? An and company. Don't you want to have that in your business, where it's not about job descriptions. It's not this is what I do. It's I do this and anything else that's needed. And those incremental changes, not all of them work, not all of the ideas work, but they try. And the good ones grow, and they nurture them, and they turn them into that green shoot of opportunity that could be something more. And if something doesn't blossom, then you quietly kill it and you move on. And that's the permission that we have today. And that's why that warrior mindset's so great, is when you challenge the status quo, you're able to continue to innovate and do something that's really exciting. I've said this many times before, and I really truly believe this, that this is your opportunity. And I think that the world needs you and your company more than ever right now. It may need to be reframed. It may need to be shifted in order to climb the ladder, but we all have an opportunity to be hyper relevant and hyper present to serve people that are in absolute need. And I will say this today, that I think the companies that are acting first and adapting fastest have the advantage. But the key to that is to be helpful. When you are helpful and fast and willing to take risks and empower your team, it's setting you up to find these great opportunities. But you've still got to be strategic. The models that we're trying to share today and this conversation that I'm trying to start is based on this philosophy that in a crisis, strategy is everything. And Winston Churchill said it best: never waste a good crisis. And the way I like to think of this is, what do you want your business to look like at the end of this crisis? So there's this opportunity today to continue to evolve. Now, with that said, why don't we open this up to try some Q&A and have some questions. If you've got a question, post it in the Q&A or the chat. I'm going to actually introduce you to my co-pilot, Sarah, and we can flip through this. Let me actually take the screen sharing off for a moment. And Sarah, if you want to put your video on, why don't we see if there's any questions here. You there, sir?
Yes, it says that you've stopped my video. Can you hear me though?
I can hear you. So do we have any questions that have come in so far?
Yes, we do. So Julia's asking, different business sectors may find the reset and reopening more complicated and unique than others. The one thing that will be similar is adoption of solution-driven innovation and delivery. This is the moment for the great thinkers to shine, and yes, it's exciting. I guess the question that comes to mind is, how do you deliver those minds to the problem for the action and solution?
So this is a question on the mindset. How do you, so if I'm understanding this correctly, it's what mindset do you need, or how do you get people to embrace the new changes? Is that what you're understanding too, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay. I think this mindset question is both internal and external. So the first thing to look at is external. When you look at what has happened today, it's like we have been smushed down Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And for many of us, we're facing a state of fear for the very first time, that we are having our state of our safety in terms of our businesses, our jobs, our health, all of that have been challenged. And for a lot of us, we don't know how to process this. And you see this in this idea where people are shutting down when because companies' marketing actually comes across as opportunistic or icky. And so the way we try to overcome this is by being hyper relevant and helpful. When you are of service to people, that gives you a mental leap to sell to them in a way that's of service. That you don't have to give all your expertise and ideas away for free, but you can say to other people that you have an option. And when you think of being service, you could help someone save money, save money, make money, save time, but it could also be soft things like bring happiness, bring joy, bring laughter. A comedian is probably one of the greatest gifts right now. It could also be to create recognition. So when you look at what you do and what the needs are, that'll give you the first piece. And when you look at that, then that drives up your internal purpose. How can you be very purpose-driven to be of service? And if you can connect those two dots, I think you overcome that psychological resistance that's there, that the world needs you more than ever. So how are you going to rise up to it?
Awesome. Okay, we have another question from Aaron. He asks, as provinces begin to open again, what can I do to stand out amongst the "we're open" and COVID protection instruction emails that everyone else will be sending?
Great question, Aaron. If your company is still doing "we're open" and doing the standard COVID stuff, you missed the mark. Maybe kill that from your editorial calendar. That content was relevant for the first 2 weeks of March, but not anymore. So how can you shift gears now to look at where you're of service and need? People are actually getting exhausted from the COVID messages, and Google did a study recently that a colleague of mine just shared with me, saying that people are actually looking for normal commercials, normal advertising, normal marketing messages, just for a sense of normalcy. They want to see products, they want to see clothing, and they want to see things that give them an opportunity to feel like they're moving forward. And as the economy reopens, then that's your opportunity. It's not about how your business is open. That's a self-centered, selfish message. It's how can you be of service, and focusing your messaging on that.
Great advice. Dawn is asking, are there 1 or 2 questions to ask of a client to help them get clarity on their issues? It will be hard to be of purpose if the client doesn't know their true problems.
If you look at this, again, another great question, Donna. If you look at this situation from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, people are in a state of fear. They may not be able to diagnose their own problems. So if you think of this from, say, a family doctor perspective, how could you engage with someone in a way that leads them to water? So what I like to do in our sales process today is really lead with the idea of a hypothesis. So for example, at Sticky Branding, when we look at our messaging, we will say we help companies recover the customers and revenue taken by COVID-19. But that preamble question that might start the conversation is, how has the quarantine or the lockdowns affected your business? And if we can get them on that spectrum from leading to bleeding, then we can have a conversation of where they are. So we try to lead with the idea of a hypothesis versus an open-ended question, because someone may not be able to process yet.
Another question here from Kim. She's asking, how would you suggest adjusting our pitching as we move into the opening environment? Will people be more willing to listen and buy right now? What do you predict?
Yeah, for sure. I think buying is changed. So after coronavirus, the value propositions have changed. And so you have to really ask that question of how can you be of service right now, and how can you be very relevant for them? And so I think the key to great pitching right now is the specificity and why your products and services are a fit for them. And if you try to take old before coronavirus marketing and push it on people, they're going to shut down. So this is that moment in time that you really need to evolve to the being present side. It may not be perfect. That's okay. Having the conversation that is relevant is better than one that is generic.
Awesome. And one last question from Jared. Do you have a prediction for what the summer months will look like for businesses? Will things return to a relative normal, or can we expect more turbulence? What are your predictions?
Great question. So like all of you, I'm following the news, I'm tracking this, and I don't really want to make a prediction of what's going to happen. I am actually operating each week with the lens of this is what business is like and trying to adapt to the situation. And what we're spending the most time looking for are those green shoots that we can start to grow out of. So I think the idea is looking for those behavioral trends that will shift versus trying to predict, is there going to be another wave? When are the lockdowns going to end? Focus on what you can control on. But thank you for all the questions. Let me flip the slides back on, and we can wrap up with a few final thoughts. First thing I'd ask you is to launch a poll. One of the things that I'm thinking about as we move forward into our future states of conversation is actually to open up this entire chat so that we can have more of a panel conversation so that you can share your experiences and we have that going on. And as we have on the dates here, we're going to be running these webinars every second Wednesday of the month, except for in November, because that falls on Remembrance Day or November 11th. So we've adjusted it for that. But we're going to be putting out more information and engaging there. But what I'd love your feedback, and even send me an email on this, is how can we make this an even better conversation experience? And how can we create that dialogue, because we're all learning together? Now, I want to just wrap up with a final thought. My dad's one of these guys, he always has these great quotes. And one of the ones that we grew up on was, nothing relieves pressure like sales. And I truly believe that's where we're at right now, is how can we be using this opportunity to adjust our value proposition, adjust our services, and the way we alleviate the pressure that is being placed on us by these lockdowns is to really focus on getting that sales number to move again. And you have that within your power. Every company does. Whether you're leading the bleeding, you can climb the ladder. And I truly believe this is the moment that you can look for opportunities to come into 2021 and beyond with an even stronger business than where you were at the start of this crisis. So if you have questions, if you want to engage at any time, or you just want to talk about the types of stuff that we do, feel free to call me, email me, text me. I'm on all the social networks at Sticky Branding, and we're highly responsive. As I've said in every webinar before, feel free to ask us a question. There's no charge. We're happy to have this conversation, because I truly believe that we're in it together, working together to overcome this crisis, and that we can be hyper generous and engaged with one another. So I really value your time and participation today. Thank you for the wonderful questions. And I'm really excited to reconnect with you in June. Thanks, guys.